Good afternoon, colleagues. I'm Catherine McTamaney, Chair of the Faculty Senate, and on behalf of the Senate, welcome to the Spring Full Faculty Assembly. Let me first offer a special thanks to Heather Connor, Molly Barth, Gijie Zhang, and Felix Wang from the Blair School of Music for that beautiful entrance to the Assembly. I want to thank as well Stacy McCarty in the Office of the Faculty Senate and our partners in the Division of Communications for their extraordinary efforts in preparing for this virtual assembly. This is now the third faculty assembly since our community instituted physical distancing guidelines in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. I cannot undervalue the essential supports that have been offered so generously to help these virtual events capture the same spirit of collegiality, of community and celebration, as if we were in the same room together, as I hope we are next fall. This afternoon's agenda includes remarks from Chancellor Daniel Diermeier as he approaches the end of his first academic year at Vanderbilt, an address by our esteemed colleague Emilie Towns, Dean of the Divinity School and Distinguished Professor of Womanist Ethics and Society, a review of the work attended to by the Faculty Senate over the last 8 months, and the presentation of a number of prestigious faculty awards. We are coming to you this afternoon from the newly completed Faculty Commons. As we reflect upon this historic year, it is fitting that we should do so from a space that offers us such promise as a faculty. This building is home to the Digital Commons and to the Faculty Senate, and includes spaces within which faculty will be able to think, learn, and lead together. While this past year has demonstrated our capacity to do so under the most challenging of contexts, this building offers a reminder of the even greater promise for when we are back together again. I first met Chancellor Daniel Diermeier last spring, when his appointment as the 9th Chancellor at Vanderbilt was announced. We were gathered in Kirkland Hall in what I didn't realize at the time would be one of our last in-person gatherings. A renowned political scientist and scholar of management, expertise that has surely been of special benefit this year, Chancellor Diermeier is a fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, the Guggenheim Foundation, and the Canadian Institute of Advanced Research. His accomplishments and reputation preceded him to Vanderbilt. What we could not have predicted until the events of this remarkable year, however, was his ability to respect and preserve the culture of the university under extraordinary demand, to respond with candor and a commitment to collaboration with the faculty and Senate in the challenges we face this year, and to lead with great vision towards what together we can become. I am delighted by his partnership with the Senate and honored to introduce Chancellor Daniel Diermeier.
Well, thank you, Catherine, for the kind introduction and for your partnership and leadership during these most difficult of times. And welcome to all of you to the Faculty Spring Assembly. Last year, Spring Assembly did not quite happen as planned. It was happened for April 2nd, almost exactly a year ago, which was about 3 weeks after the students left campus. So that didn't work out. We still celebrated faculty accomplishments with the Spring Faculty 2020 website. But today we're able to get together at least virtually, so that demonstrates both some progress and our resilience under very challenging circumstances. Let me spend a few words to talk about what the last year has been like and how we have weathered the biggest crisis in the history of the university. Indeed, I would say that during 2020, during the last year, we weathered 3 crises at once. First of all, of course, there was the public health crisis. As the COVID-19 pandemic has led to tremendous losses and changes in our lives, in our daily lives and the lives of our families, and how we would respond to these challenges has been difficult for all of us. But it was not the only crisis. The second crisis was the financial crisis that affected higher education. And for those of you that are not aware of quite how severe this was, let me share a couple of numbers with you. Higher education during the last 12 months has lost 650,000 jobs That's 1 in 8 jobs. And many of these jobs will never come back. It's by far the biggest economic impact on higher education that we know of. And it will take quite a while to get over that. And then I think the third crisis really is a crisis, is a moral crisis and a political crisis that really was triggered by the killing of George Floyd and so many others. And it led to urgent and renewed calls for racial justice in the context of a very polarized political climate. So we had to deal with all these three things simultaneously. And despite all these challenges, Vanderbilt is in great shape. We were able to bring back our students safely and provide the most impactful education among any of our peers. That doesn't mean that the education was like we wanted it to be in all aspects, but we distinguished ourselves when we look at other universities that had to deal with the same types of challenges. We also continued our path-breaking research. We were able to accelerate hiring. We continued our investment in student and faculty. We're in a strong financial position. We have a group of grateful students and parents. My inbox, it has been overflowing with thank you notes, especially after we announced the in-person commencement. But the real highlight happened at the beginning of this year when there was a grateful op-ed in the Hustler. And when like if you're a university administrator, once you get that, you can retire safely. So I'm like, that was wonderful to see. We have engaged alumni that are proud of the university, and the university's reputation has been enhanced. And most importantly, we've done all of this the right way. We've done it in a collaborative spirit, in a cooperative culture. We worked through the many, many issues that we had to deal with in a thoughtful, data-driven way, really informed by the best research that was available to us at the time and supported by our colleagues that bring so much to the table in terms of their specific expertise. And we did it as one community, one Vanderbilt, being able to work together, to really take care of each other as one community. But we were also willing to take bold action when the situation demanded it. These last months called for heroic effort from our faculty and from our community. There are too many to mention. I'd just like to mention a couple of examples. I should say that I was fortunate enough to recently participate in a faculty meeting in the College of Arts and Sciences when they gave out special COVID awards. And it was tremendously moving to me to see the dedication that our faculty had towards providing the impactful teaching and education experience that Vanderbilt is known for. So here's a couple of examples. Instructor Suk Bae-yong taught every Korean language class himself, since no other colleagues would be able to get to Nashville for the fall semester because of visa restrictions. Finance professor Jesse Blauker taught an early morning online class, very early, to make it possible for his international students to engage with the class from faraway time zones. At Peabody, Catherine Loss used virtual chats, breakout rooms, and Center for Teaching Resources as a means to empower students. We had many examples of creatively using multiple technologies and hybrid instructions. We had entirely different ways to practice and perform music together, despite the fact that in-person performances were impossible. And we developed new classes and new curricula based on pandemic-related issues. And then on the research side, I'm just going to highlight examples from the biomedical area because that has been so front and center during the COVID-19 pandemic. We were able to keep our labs open at limited capacity, which led to faculty and graduate students and students literally to work around the clock in order to provide us as a society and as the world with life-saving breakthroughs. Dr. Jim Crow at the Vanderbilt Vaccine Center developed antibody therapy for COVID-19. Therapy is now used by AstraZeneca. Mark Denison led the first trials of the Moderna vaccine and also did the path-breaking work for the remdesivir treatment, really the first treatment that we had for COVID-19. Dr. Buddy Creech conducted phase 3 clinical trials of the Moderna and the Johnson & Johnson vaccines, and just yesterday announced the launch of a new phase in the trial of a COVID-19 vaccine for children aged 6 to 11. Vice Provost Vanessa Beasley handled all sorts of efforts regarding student abroad programs, classroom safety protocols, and many other uncharted initiatives, and many others played an important role. And that also included creating an environment for our students to be safe. I'm just gonna, again, mention just one name, Melissa Grizalfi, the Dean of the Commons, who thoughtfully reimagined the first-year student experience under very difficult circumstances. And then, of course, our other faculty heads of house fostered students' social lives that had to be redesigned with an emphasis on their mental well-being on top of the necessary academic support. We're in great financial shape. That is not an accident. It was a consequence of the great stewardship, great financial stewardship of Chancellor Emeritus Nicholas Zeppers and Interim Chancellor and Provost Venti. Our balance sheet was healthy. Our income, when we looked at how we spend our money, our income statement was strong. We had to do some cuts, but we were able to avoid massive budget cuts, layoffs, and furloughs. And we also did not have to set aside faculty retirement contributions, as so many of our peers had to do. All that in addition to all the various expenses that had to do with providing safety supplies, PPE, COVID testing, new meeting and classroom technologies. And I want to just share just one anecdote on that, because it's easy to say, well, we're in good financial shape and we had to do some painful things, but not as much as the others. But one of the things that I like to do is I like to thank our faculty and staff directly. And one way in which I do that is I participate in, I call this like managing by Zoom bombing, which means that I've unannounced show up at some of the meetings that our staff have. And in this particular case, this was a group of staff, about 20 of them. They're working and keeping the building safe, working on the ground side. And they did such a tremendous job when we had our snowfall. When was it? In late January. And I have to say, I'm slowly getting used to the fact that I'm getting an emergency warning message when there's an inch of snow on the horizon, which is still takes a little time after having spent 22 years in Chicago, but I'm getting there. At any rate, these people work 14 hours, 16 hours a day to keep the campus open. And so I talked to them, I thanked them, I showed up, and then the head of that group told me the following, and he said, Chancellor, I just want to thank you personally that you were able to avoid mass furloughs and mass layoffs. We're blue-collar people, and we need to put food on the table for families. And I think that was one of the most moving moments I had during the last year. And it showed that all the diligence and all the effort can also help people when we are able to avoid these tough financial cuts and these tough financial situations for them to be able to provide for their families and be able to do the wonderful work that they do for the university. How did we get this done? I think at the end of the day, it was really because of our culture, of our values, of who we are, our culture of collegiality. Make no mistake, we have been tested this year, but we were able to maintain the culture and our values under very difficult circumstances. Our lack of silos, our ability to collaborate university-wide is rare in higher education. And we're all grounded in the same set of values, united by a strong common purpose. The Faculty Senate continues to strengthen this culture through its leadership, providing forums for discussions. And I want to particularly thank the Executive Committee, current chair, Catherine McTamaney, current vice chair, Ben Harris, and then John McLean and Holly Allgood, last year chair and co-chair, have also played an important role. The discussions in the executive committee were essential. They were thoughtful, they were collaborative, and it allowed us to really work through the difficult issues that we faced as a university in a collaborative fashion. But what we always thought about is that while we're dealing with the challenges of COVID, how can we make sure that Vanderbilt gets through this year stronger, that it is well positioned for the future? And as I said before, because of the great work of my predecessors, we were able to lean in when others pulled back. That meant, for example, the Destination Vanderbilt initiative, which was a very ambitious program in hiring. We already welcomed 26 full-time tenure track and tenured faculty to the university. But most importantly, what it allowed us to do is to bring young emerging talent to Vanderbilt when others were not able to hire. I've heard from at least two academic units that they were able to basically hire the first choice across the board. I've heard tremendous things from areas that are particularly competitive, areas such as computer science and economics. So this was a bold move. We were the only one among our peers that were willing to do that, but I think it will position the university extremely well for the future. We're continuing to invest in facilities. Many of you may have heard about the capital project at the Owen Graduate School of Management. We have continued investment at Peabody, and our plans for residential colleges continue to evolve. We will open the Nicholas S. Zeppers College in August, which is a milestone in the transformation of the West End neighborhood. We're also revisiting the plans to take down the remaining Carmichael Tower, so get ready for the long-planned implosion in the summer. We hope we can do it this year. And then we have also continued our work on EDI initiatives. We formed an ad hoc committee of the Board of Trust, which is working very hard to support equity, diversity, and inclusion at the board level. And then we have had various different conversations, symposia, just the most recent one, including Professor Dennis Dickinson, the Reverend James M. Lawson, Professor and Professor of History at the College of Arts and Science, and Alice Randall, Writer-in-Residence in the Department of African American and Diaspora Studies. It's very important for us as a university to have thoughtful dialogue on issues having to do with equity, diversity, and inclusion, and I like where we are on that. We've also made tremendous progress on sustainability. We now have over 21 LEED certified buildings on campus. Our university has received the 2020 Leadership Award from the US Green Building Council, and we continue with the development of new innovative solutions to improve our sustainability efforts. Many of you have heard about the announcement on Monday, where we committed the launch of the Van United Fund in athletics. This is a bold and ambitious project to significantly improve the environment for our student athletes and improve the fan experience. And it's another example of where we're taking bold steps. Now, many of you, I know, are fans of Vanderbilt athletics, and so you'll be happy by that, but not all of you. And some of you may have looked at that with some concern, but it's very important that as we're thinking about investment in athletics, that this can bring benefits to the university overall, and these benefits are profound. There are very few things that can bring a community together as athletics. They have a significant role in fundraising, not just for athletics, but the research shows that people that give to athletics also give to other parts of the university. And then I think very importantly, and sometimes I think underappreciated, they provide a public forum unlike any other. So just one example, a particularly striking example is Sarah Fuller, a Vanderbilt senior, and the first woman to play in a football game in the SEC and the first woman to score in a football game in the SEC. And you may say, well, that's just about football, but I don't think that's right. I think if done right, and if we're doing athletics right, we can utilize the platform of athletics to address broader social and academic issues. So, for example, when Sarah Fuller hit her extra points, we had 2.1 billion social media impressions. I mean, by a factor of 1,000 more than anything else, and by probably a factor of 1 million more social impressions than when I was announced. So that's a much bigger platform. Now, that's not just about kicking extra points. That is something else, I think. It demonstrates to everyone that we have a history of trailblazing and creating opportunity. And in this particular case, that we were the place where boundaries were broken for women and created additional opportunity for us, created additional opportunities for young women. So as a consequence of that, thousands of girls in the United States and beyond wake up this morning dreaming of going to Vanderbilt because they believe that Vanderbilt is the place where they can realize their potential. And that's an important message that is very difficult to replicate or reach in any other way. And just as a last comment on that, you may have seen that Sarah Fuller was recognized and selected to introduce another trailblazer, Vice President Kamala Harris. In her presidential inauguration broadcast had 150,000 video views. So that's the platform that athletics can provide. We want to be thoughtful about it, about how we use it, but it's a tremendous platform for us that allows us to advance the values of the university with a very, very large audience. Let me say a couple of things about what's coming ahead. Big important thing, commencement. We're looking forward to the upcoming double commencement next month. So we have the class of 2020 on May 1st and 2nd, class of 2021, May 15 and 2nd. This is really a sacred part of the Vanderbilt experience. And we worked extra hard, and the team did a tremendous job to see whether we could have an in-person commencement. It's not going to be the same, it's going to be different. But it allows our students that had to sacrifice so much to have a meaningful commencement experience in person with members of their family. And what we did when we thought about commencement were the values that we had that have guided every aspect of our decision making. How are we focused and put our energies towards our common purpose? How do we provide opportunities for our students to learn, for our faculty to do research, and for our students to have the transformative educational experience as much as we can? We never ask ourselves, what's the easier path? We ask ourselves, what's the right path? And then how do we work to make it possible? So I encourage you to participate in the commencement. We have tremendous graduate day speakers with Caroline Kennedy and Dr. Anthony Fauci, and so we're looking forward to that. I want to conclude with a couple of important trends that are shaping our thinking about the long-term future of Vanderbilt in the context of the pandemic. The number one is the impact of online education. This was the biggest field experiment in online education in the history of higher education. And what we've learned from that, I think, is a couple of interesting and not so obvious insights. The first one is that contrary to expectation, it has reinforced the value of residential colleges. Our students were desperate to be together and to have a joint an in-person learning experience. But it has also showed that our faculty can be comfortable and teach in an online environment very well. To be a little flippant about it, I think we can teach 80% of our classes with 80% of the quality. And that is particularly important as we are thinking about new opportunities to connect, continuing education, alumni engagement, and also new forms of teaching. For example, the Chancellor Lecture Series with Madeline Albright and Colin Powell now had 2,800 live attendees in comparison to the 1,200 who we could usually fit physically in Frankfurt. And then the online class taught by John Meacham, John Gear, and fellow members of the political science faculty was the largest class ever taught in Vanderbilt's history. But more importantly, it allowed for guest appearances by former President George W. Bush, or when I was there, we had Speaker Nancy Pelosi suddenly pop up and talk to the students. Now that is not a substitute for deep immersion that happens in a residential context, but it is a way for the students to engage with the material in a new and interesting way. So we will experiment with that, and we look for new opportunities for us to connect in different ways. Second point, global engagement. Online learning has also opened up new ways for us to have a global presence. When we think about how this will be shaping our global strategy, thinking about it in the context of these new technologies and learning technologies, I think is going to be essential. And then I think we have massive challenges as a society. I'm going to call them generational issues. Those include calls for social and racial justice, political polarization, climate change, sustainability, and the impact of technological change. We will take these challenges on. We have already started to do so. I'm just going to mention in passing the Vanderbilt Project on Unity and American Democracy, which is a great example of our faculty coming together and providing a thoughtful, data-driven, evidence-based approach that's looking to history for context, for full picture, to provide a different forum for where important complex issues can be discussed and debated. And then I should also point out that we need to be more engaged with our community. Nashville is changing, Tennessee is changing, the South is changing at a very, very rapid pace. Universities can be an enormous force for good for their communities. And I would encourage all of us to double down on our engagement with Vanderbilt and with our community. The bottom line, we have shown over the last year that we can be true to ourselves, that our values will carry us through under the most difficult and most challenging circumstances, and we can be proud of what we've accomplished. But just importantly to keep in mind here is that good decision-making is not just about the outcome. We're glad on where we are, but importantly, we did things the right way. We worked difficult things out in a collaborative spirit. We were willing to take risks. We were intentional. We acted with urgency, but also with a lot of care. So about a year ago, not quite a year ago, 9 months ago, is that I hope that our response to COVID-19 will be our proudest moment. It was hope more than expectation, but I was confident that we as a university could step up to the challenge and then look back decades from now as this being a moment where we shaped Vanderbilt's and our own personal legacy. I want to thank you all for your tremendous work on that in this endeavor. I know that we ask you to do a lot. We ask you to do a lot more, but this university community has stepped up to the challenge, and we can all be proud of that. Before we move to the faculty awards, let me say a few words in recognition of Provost Susan Arventi. As many of you know, this will be Susan's last faculty assembly at Vanderbilt before she assumes her new role as 14th president of Wake Forest University. Susan and her work has impacted each one of us during her 19 years here at Vanderbilt. There are many profound and lasting accomplishments. I'm just going to mention a couple of them. She co-developed the academic strategic plan, which we use on a daily basis in guiding our decision-making. On the side, she runs a globally respected research program. She was the first woman to lead Vanderbilt and the first woman to confer degrees, which she did last spring amid extraordinary circumstances. She led the university through the onset of the pandemic, a historic moment in our nearly 150-year history, protected our safety and our mission, and she was the architect of a meticulously designed return to campus plan. And for those of you that knows Susan well, she always puts the Vanderbilt community first. I'm grateful for the strong foundation and for the partnership over the last month, and for all the work that she has done through trust, transparency, and teamwork. I know that she has influenced many of you personally, and we're all the better for it. We're excited for her next chapter in North Carolina and for her enduring impact on higher education. Please join me in thanking Provost Venti. And now it's time to celebrate our faculty colleagues who have demonstrated profound achievement in service, teaching, and research during their time here at Vanderbilt. These individuals and their accomplishments represent our mission to transform lives through education and a commitment to working for the betterment of humankind. These awards reflect faculty members' dedication to teaching and service and their dedication to the students and our broader community. They also pay tribute to those who helped build this great university, including past chancellors Joe Wyatt, Alexander Hurd, and Harvey Branscombe, university stalwarts like Madison Sarrar, who served Vanderbilt as a faculty member and senior leader for more than 60 years, as well as philanthropic organizations like the Ellen Gregg Ingalls Foundations, which has supported the university for more than half a century. For a list of the previous recipients for each of the following 7 awards, as well as a list of this year recipients, please visit the Faculty Affairs website after the conclusion of today's events. We will begin with the Madison Sarrar Prize for Excellence in Undergraduate Teaching. The honoree for this award is selected based on exceptional classroom teaching and demonstrated commitment to student learning. The recipient receives an award of $5,000 and an engraved pewter cup. It's my great pleasure to present this year's Madison Sarrar Prize to Alice Randall, writer in residence, African American and Diaspora Studies. The students who nominated Alice praised her ability to create an inclusive learning environment where everybody feels valued and supported. They noted that she inspired them to focus on the depth and quality of their learning beyond the grades and to approach course material in creative ways that engage their individual learning styles. Alice is an award-winning novelist, screenwriter, and songwriter who teaches courses on soul food, African American children's literature, African American film, and creative writing. It's my great honor to present Alice with the Sarrar Prize. Congratulations, Alice. I will now present the Ellen Gregg Ingalls Award for Excellence in Classroom Teaching, which is endowed by the Ingalls Foundation. The recipient of the award is honored with a cash prize of $5,000 and an engraved pewter cup. The recipient of this year's Ingalls Award is Megan Saylor, professor of psychology and human development. Megan's numerous nominations from students describe her as an educator who goes above and beyond in advocating for students' academic and personal success. This year, she offered synchronous classes for both students on campus and at alternate hours for international students studying in their home countries. She employs a variety of teaching strategies for learners with different needs. And Megan has received many accolades for her teaching at Vanderbilt over the years. She's known for a deep dedication to her students and to the university at large. Thank you, Megan, and congratulations. And now for the Harvey Branscombe Distinguished Professor Award, which pays tribute to Chancellor Branscombe, who led the university for 17 years. The award comes with a prize of $5,000 and an engraved silver tray, and official designation as the Harvey Branscombe Distinguished Professor for 1 academic year. The award recognizes creative research and teaching, as well as service to students, colleagues, and society at large. This year's Branscombe Award goes to Edward Fisher, Cornelius Vanderbilt Professor of Anthropology and Director of the Center of Latin American Studies. Ted Fisher joined the Vanderbilt faculty as an assistant professor of anthropology in 1996, His research focuses on indigenous Maya communities in Guatemala and Latin America. His extensive publications have garnered more than 3,000 citations and established him as a leading expert in his field. Moreover, he's a passionate educator who has taken scores of students to conduct fieldwork in Guatemala, where they develop a compassionate view of the world that draws on numerous disciplines and perspectives. Ted was nominated by Tiffany Tang, chair of the Department of Anthropology, and it's now my honor to present him with this well-deserved award. Congratulations, Ted. We will now present the Alexander Hurd Distinguished Service Professor Award. This award pays tribute to Chancellor Hurd by recognizing scholarship that solves an important social problem. The recipient carries the title of Alexander Hurd Distinguished Service Professor for 1 year and receives an award of $5,000 and an engraved silver tray. The recipient of this year's award is David Owens, Professor for the Practice of Management and Innovation. David is a prominent authority on innovation and new product development. At Vanderbilt, he serves as the executive director of the Wondery and is known by his peers for being exceptionally giving of his time in service to the community. Nominating members of the consultative committee called him a human dynamo who sustained and innovative contributions, cut through bureaucracy, not that we have any at Vanderbilt, and deploy the power of creativity and hard work to solve problems across numerous areas of expertise. David was nominated by Douglas Adams, chair of the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering. Congratulations, David. Now we will present the Joe B. Wyatt Distinguished University Professor Award, which recognizes significant discoveries that bridge multiple academic disciplines. The recipients of the award carries the title of Joe B. Wyatt Distinguished University Professor for 1 year and receives a $5,000 award and an engraved silver tray. I am pleased to present this award to Mark Denison, Edward Claiborne Stallman Professor of Pediatric Physiology and Cell Metabolism. Mark was nominated by Stephen Weber, chair of the Pediatrics Department. Mark is one of the world's foremost experts on coronaviruses, whose work has directly led to solutions for our current global pandemic. I mentioned Mark's work in passing before, and it's important to point out that his critical research really began decades ago when it was not considered a priority for the NIH, but he was dedicated and committed to it. And now we have Mark's work in collaboration with researchers and partners nationwide and with support from the Dolly Parton COVID Research Fund to think from the treatment remdesivir as well as the development of the Moderna vaccine. This award could not be more timely, and it's my great honor to present it to Mark. Mark, thank you for all your contributions and congratulations. Our next award is named in honor of Bishop Joseph Johnson, who was the first African-American to earn an undergraduate and doctoral degree at Vanderbilt, thereby blazing a critical trail for students today. It goes to a member of the faculty who has proactively nurtured an academic environment where everybody feels valued and where diversity is celebrated. The recipient carries the title Joseph A. Johnson Jr. Distinguished Leadership Professor for 1 year and receives a cash award of $5,000 and an engraved silver tray. I'm honored to present this award to Christopher Carpenter, the E. Bronson Ingram Chair and Professor of Economics. Kit earned his doctorate from the University of California, Berkeley, and joined the Vanderbilt faculty as a tenured member in 2013. He helped to establish a scholarly and teaching-focused center on LGBTQ issues, including the economic, social status, health, and legal positions of members of the LGBTQ community. He's a leading scholar in this area who has leveraged his knowledge of economics to advance LGBTQ inclusion of diverse students, faculty, and staff at Vanderbilt and through the academy. Kit directs the LGBTQ Policy Lab and was nominated by Tara McKay, Gilbert Gonzalez, and additional faculty associated with the lab. Thank you for your enormous contribution, Kit, and congratulations. This brings us to the conclusion of the 6 awards that are traditionally recognized at the Spring Faculty Assembly. But this year, it's a great pleasure to announce a new additional award given this year. It goes without saying that the past year has demonstrated how profoundly the university relies on the tireless service and leadership of faculty who dedicate their expertise and talent to the mission of the university as a whole, and thereby to every faculty member within it. This year, the Chancellor's Award for University Service will be given to recognize a faculty member truly exceptional, truly exceptional and selfless service to benefit the entire university community. It will be the first award that recognizes faculty service at the university level beyond service to the Senate or other faculty governmental bodies. Like the Chancellor's Award for Research and Equity in Diversity and Inclusion, it will consist of a $2,000 cash prize and an engraved pewter julep cup. It's my great pleasure to present the Chancellor's Award for University Service to Pamela O. Jones, Associate Professor of Nursing and Senior Associate Dean for Clinical and Community Partnerships, for her work as co-commander of Vanderbilt's Public Health Central Command Center. Since day one, the Command Center has worked around the clock to assure that our educational and research mission would continue to thrive throughout a global crisis. Under the direction of Pam and their co-commander, Andrea George, Director of Environmental Health and Safety for the university, they applied their scholarly expertise and hard work to the careful orchestration of all processes, including managing patient profiles, contract tracing, isolation planning, quarantine notifications, cluster analysis, data management, and psychological assistance for all on-campus students, faculty, and staff. Without Pam's leadership, our successful return to campus would not have been possible. Moreover, she has helped to create a state-of-the-art emergency response model that can be deployed in Vanderbilt and beyond in unforeseen, challenging times to come. Pam, we cannot thank you enough, and I'm honored to present you with this award. Congratulations. Congratulations to all our faculty award winners. You exemplify the dedication, innovation, and strength of Vanderbilt's faculty, and I'm proud to count you as colleagues. And with that, I will now turn it back to Faculty Senate Chair Catherine McTamaney.
Thank you, Chancellor Diermeier, and on behalf of the Faculty Senate, congratulations to this year's recipients. And what a year it has been. Working off the excellent climate in the Senate that was established by past Chair John McClain and past Vice Chair Holly Allgood, Ben Harris and I focused charges to the Senate standing committees under the theme of E pluribus unum, out of many, one Vanderbilt. Had this been a typical year, the work of the Senate would have focused on those areas that bring us together from multiple perspectives. The experiences of provost reporting faculty and VUMC reporting faculty, the experiences of tenure line and clinical practice, lecture, and research faculty, and the influence of the Senate in issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion, both within our body and across the campus. But this was no typical year. And instead, the work of the Senate swung between our long-term goals, described by the E pluribus unum ideal, and by the immediate demands related to the pandemic. Last summer, the Faculty Senate hosted and facilitated 7 separate town halls across the university and within the individual colleges to help educate faculty and to inform the administration in the development of the Return to Campus plan. Past Chair John McClain co-chaired the University Continuity Working Group, and Senate representatives contributed to each of the subcommittees of that group and to the Public Health Advisory Task Force. And Vice Chair Ben Harris helped lead the University Working Group on schools and childcare. These daily efforts last spring and summer helped to elevate diverse faculty perspectives across the seemingly innumerable ways in which our lives and work here would have to change this year. But one of the many lessons upon this work this year is that the world still turns, even in the midst of crisis. Upon our return to campus in August, the Senate continued its COVID-related work while addressing many of the original charges that we had articulated before the pandemic struck. The Academic Policies and Services Committee collaborated with the Office of the Vice Provost for Research to prepare faculty for the launch of the VERA system, and with the libraries and the Vice Provost for Academic Affairs to promote a faculty-focused educational series to demystify library resources and expenditures. The Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee undertook important collaboration across stakeholder groups toward actionable steps to improve the climate of welcoming for students, faculty, and staff from diverse backgrounds. We anticipate a number of motions related to this work to come before the Senate in the remaining meetings this year, including a call for the university to look deeply into its history and the legacy of the land on which it stands, and to begin the important process of identifying, naming, and resolving the historic inequities that may still shadow our work today. The Faculty Life Committee initiated a survey of peer institutions to assess faculty involvement in benefits decision-making, as well as partnering with the Student Life Committee to mentor student leaders seeking Senate actions, and with the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee to amplify faculty conversations around issues of equity. The FLC has also spearheaded a proposal for the regular use of these faculty comments to imagine the best use of these spaces in future years. The Faculty Manual Committee integrated into the manual the newly adopted rules for faculty-related Title IX processes identified by the Chancellor last summer, and partnered with the Grievance Committee to align our grievance policy to the new demands of federal Title IX regulations. In these efforts, the Faculty Manual Committee protected faculty involvement in the review of Title IX concerns, even within those new federal limits. Most recently, committee leaders have worked to inform changes to the conflict of interest protocols here, and we are especially grateful to the collaborative partnership with General Counsel as the university moves to improve and update those processes. The Grievance Committee refined the processes for both Type A and Type B grievances to provide more clarity and alignment between them, and to allow faculty to review findings of fact before the committee makes a final recommendation on grievances. Those changes were adopted by the Senate in March. The Senate Affairs Committee presented motions to the Senate to allow for virtual meetings, both of the Senate and of this assembly, and to ratify the work undertaken remotely before those rules were adopted. They are working now to provide recommendations for onboarding new senators to each of the colleges whose representation in the Senate may be expanded this year, after the Senate affirmed an expansion of our body from 60 elected senators to 66. That vote, which was approved by the Senate earlier this spring, is referenced in the motion you've been asked to ratify today and reflects the similar expansion of faculty in the Assembly over the last few years. The Strategic Planning and Academic Freedom Committee is considering practical recommendations for the renewal of academic analytics contract and engaging in longer-term conversations to consider Vanderbilt's role in ensuring academic freedom within the university and among peers, especially in tempestuous political landscapes. They are additionally assessing the impact of digital teaching policies and will host Professor Derek Bruff at next week's Senate meeting to report on available supports from the Center for Teaching. The Student Life Committee, in collaboration with the Center for Teaching and the Office of LGBTQ+ Life, filmed a series of short chats between faculty and the Casey Potter Center leadership to answer faculty-generated questions about best practices with LGBTQ students, and in cooperation with the Senate Executive Committee, collaborated on 3 workshops for faculty and staff to better support our LGBTQ+ community. SLC also contributed to the White Tents Plan through invitation from Mike Perez and Mark Petty to help expand physically distanced opportunities for faculty-student interactions this semester. The Student Life Committee will host student leaders from Vanderbilt student government at next week's Senate meeting. The tireless commitment of thought and leadership by these elected senators has helped to protect the day-to-day work of the university, while simultaneously strengthening our response to the demands in a year marked both by pandemic and political upheaval and unrest. And to those senators, I offer my very deepest thanks. My gratitude too goes to the 15 additional faculty members who, by invitation of the Executive Committee, joined our standing committees as a part of the Senate's efforts to amplify the voices of historically underrepresented faculty. Your efforts elevated the work of the Senate and helped to move the Senate towards a more just and equitable representation of faculty interests. Thank you. The Faculty Senate is an essential part of the model of shared governance at Vanderbilt, and I am happy to report on the efforts of the Senate Executive Committee in representing faculty voice at the highest levels of decision-making here. In collaboration with the Chancellor and Provost, Senate Exec organized a mid-year update to the Senate body in December for university operations, teaching, research, and financial implications within our COVID response. Earlier in the year, and in collaboration with Vice Provost Padma Raghavan and Vice Provost Tracy George, the Executive Committee hosted 3 informational sessions to support faculty seeking BU Strong funds for the spring semester. In December, Exec hosted a dialogue with Dean Benbow, Dean Geer, Dean Candelaria, and Dean Fauché for consultation and support specific to undergraduate life. And in January, a similar collaboration with Tracy George and Dave Rayford to develop recommendations to refine the faculty manual to be a more reflective body of the scope of shared governance. Senate Executive Committee members have contributed to the return to campus plan for the fall of 2021 and to the search for a new provost to replace the irreplaceable Susan Wente. We've served on the Bookstore RFP Advisory Committee, which helped to identify a new vendor for the university bookstore, the Faculty Athletics Committee, which contributed to the consideration of academic interests for student athletes, and to the Provost's Ad Hoc Committee to consider wellness issues for students, faculty, and staff. We met last semester with Vice Chancellor Candace Lee, who also presented to the full Senate about the experience of student athletes this year. We offer the Chancellor and the Vice Chancellor our earnest support for the Vanda United project, an ambitious investment into student athletics, and for the vision that reflects the voices of so many faculty and community members in the strategic plan for athletics that Vice Chancellor Lee first shared with the Senate last spring. And we have met monthly with the Chancellor and Provost, regularly with the Vice Chancellors and Vice Provosts, and twice with the Board of Trust, as we seek to represent the diverse perspectives of faculty in our effort to, as our mission reminds us, uphold the highest standards and be a leader in the quest for new knowledge through scholarship, dissemination of knowledge through teaching and outreach, and creative experimentation of ideas and concepts. This will surely be remembered as a remarkable year. But our work is not done. The Senate Task Force on Administrative Efficiency, established to identify both chronic and acute administrative burdens on faculty and staff related to procurement, travel, grants management, computing, and similar essential tasks across the university, is hard at work, developing recommendations and strategies to reduce these burdens. TFAE has hosted a series of listening sessions, including a working session with provost reporting senators just last week, as they prepare for the first installment of their recommendations expected later this summer. The Executive Committee will soon transition to the leadership of Chair-elect Professor Mark Magnuson and Vice Chair-elect Professor Ryan Middaugh, and I am optimistic for their intended focus on the structural obstacles that affect faculty experiences between provost reporting and VUMC reporting faculty these 5 years after the institutional split. And finally, while the charges to many of the standing committees this year included considerations for clinical, practice, lecture, and research line faculty, it is clear that identifying strategies to better resolve disparities in the recruitment, mentoring, promotion, and retirement of our CPRL peers requires a focused, deliberative effort. Toward that end, I'm announcing the creation of a task force on clinical, practice, lecture, and research faculty standing to develop recommendations to address structural, organizational, and cultural barriers to the full and equitable contributions of scholars, researchers, practitioners, and artists across the university. Leading this work as co-chairs will be Professor Stephen Goodbread from the College of Arts and Science, Professor Brian Heuser from Peabody College, and Professor Christine Marasco from the School of Engineering. I'm grateful to the many colleagues across the campus who have already contributed to this conversation and optimistic for the influence this group will have toward recruiting, retaining, and affirming the essential work of colleagues on this track. I remind you too that there are 2 Senate meetings remaining this academic year. As I mentioned, next Thursday, April 8th, our agenda will include presentations from the Vanderbilt Student Government, the Center for Teaching in the Digital Commons, and during which the faculty will consider a number of additional motions from the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Standing Committee related to academic freedom, civility, education, and advocacy. At our final meeting in May, we will hear from Provost Susan Wente and Vice Chancellor Eric Kopstein on lessons learned from the spring and on the return to campus plan for the fall. Vice Chancellor Brett Sweet on university finances, and Vice Provost Tracy George on faculty wellness and the results of the coach survey. And if you have not yet cast your vote to ratify the Senate's recommendations for reapportionment, I hope that you'll do so before the close of today's assembly. It is a special privilege of the chair of the Senate to introduce the faculty speaker at each full faculty assembly, and I am indeed honored to introduce Dean Emilie Towns of the Vanderbilt Divinity School. The Reverend Dr. Towns is a distinguished scholar in theological education and a distinguished professor of women ethics and society. Dean Towns' scholarship includes work in Christian ethics, cultural theory and studies, postmodernism and social postmodernism, and womanist theology. In this most exceptional year, when the demands of the pandemic amplified longstanding crises in healthcare and access, economic justice, and race justice across our nation, I can think of no voice better suited to address the faculty assembly than that of Dean Emilie Towns. Dean Towns.
Thank you, Catherine. Perhaps a different kind of talk today. Maybe you are familiar with this childhood chant. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. I remember my teachers, grandmother, parents, aunts, and other mothers teaching it to us when we were growing up. In that small trans-class Black Southern community that I called home in my youth. I also remember using it as a retort to playmates who sometimes turned cruel or indifferent or worse, dismissive. It was only as I grew older and understood the power of words that I no longer used this retort because it was not true. I experienced the sometime anguish of being called out of my name, as the old folks used to say, of being labeled ugly or too smart or naive, and having to dig deep into other resources my parents and other loving adults put in me to say no and not to be fooled into self-hatred. The other day, I recalled this old adage when it was used in a senior paper I was reading and preparing for the students' oral defense. Why did the older adults in my life teach us little Black kids this adage with such universal vigor? They had to know that we would figure it out as we grew older and experienced more in life and living. And I do not think it's coincidental that one of the earliest, if not the earliest citation of this adage is from a US religious periodical that had a largely Black audience, the Christian Recorder of March 1862, though I suspect its origins is much earlier than this. It was deployed to help express indifference to verbal insult while reckoning with the dangers of physical abuse or violence. This verbal signification was a way to preserve the inner person, that which would help folk tolerate whatever verbal insult or name calling that came their way so that they could possibly survive the sometime deadly assault on Black lives. But from our 2021 perch, this can appear to be a rather thin defense against systemic isms that have been woven into the threads of our lives and scholarship, and sometimes enters our classrooms. To say that hurtful words may not cause physical pain, and because they do not, one should ignore them or disregard them, rings as trite with all we know about the way that language functions in our ego and psyche to begin to wither us from within, and can create hollowed out methods and musings that may be interesting, but fail to address the rich excitement of living and the challenges we face in the academy and society to help translate our work into vibrant and public conversations interested in truth-telling, rather than swapping misguided bromides of power in verbal and physical minefields. So as a sometimes grumpy social ethicist, I have an investment in the systems and structures that shape us as we shape them to be just and to try to suss out what we mean by powerful notions such as the common good or academic freedom. And then it came to me. This old adage was a holding pattern for us. It gave little Black kids like me a chance to gain some thickness to our skin, some confidence in our worth, some time to believe we were just as much a gift to the rest of creation as anyone else, so that when the name calling came, we could catch it and deflect it, and if safe to do so, call out the lie and the constellation of stereotypes and caricatures that hold that lie in place. Now, much of my work over these last several years has been exploring the nature of stereotypes that demean and draw what I think of as hellish caricatures of Black folk, particularly Black women and children. Aunt Jemima, Sapphire, Welfare Queen, Tragic Mulatta, Pickaninny. These names and others that call Asian groups, indigenous groups, ethnicities, nationalities, citizenships, genders, sexualities, and more out of their name are meant to define, categorize, commodify, and dismiss the complexity of lives that we often do not know, but have glimpses of, and assume that the glimpse is exhaustive. These negative, demeaning caricatures or stereotypes and other stereotypes based on other races and ethnicities, genders, nationalities, orientations, age, political persuasion, religious beliefs, theologies are products of our imagination gone wrong. What I term the fantastic hegemonic imagination, drawing on Foucault's fantastic and Gramsci's hegemony, melded by womanist social ethical methodology and analysis. In short, the fantastic hegemonic imagination traffics in people's lives that are caricatured or pillaged so that the imagination that creates the fantastic can control the world in its own image. If we say it enough, even when not true, we begin to think it accurate and representative and ultimately fact. The caricature moves from simplification and exaggeration to policy and religious tenets, or in the case of Aunt Jemima, to pancake, waffle, and cornmeal mixes, grits, and syrup. But she was not a historical figure. House slaves were, for the most part, mulatta or quadroon, not dark-skinned. They were not fat, even though working in the plantation big house, servants were not guaranteed an abundance of food, so very few were stout. But the minstrel shows of the late 1800s began to conjure her up for laughs and entertainments. She was the creation of the white imagination that began appearing in the post-Civil War magazines, imagining a bucolic South that, quite frankly, never existed. And from the moment she was introduced by the Pearl Milling Company of St. Joseph, Missouri in 1888 for the first commercial pancake mix, Black folks and allies protested her existence because she was not accurate nor true. Well, finally, Quaker has announced that it has removed Aunt Jemima, is removing the Aunt Jemima icon, who did go through several iterations. The last one was a very beautiful coif with pearls. Moved her from the packaging and changed the name of the brand. This just in 2020. And now going back to its original name, Pearl Milling Company, this summer, 2021, she will finally be gone from the packaging, but she lingers. One of the things about words is that they often conjure up images, and the images created in the fantastic hegemonic imagination are no respecter of race or gender or any of the other ways we realize our living in our great diversity. Words can harm, but they can also heal. And this is where we in the Academy can be helpful, if not necessary, as we engage in putting the knowledge we have into public spaces and are constantly learning to help create a democracy that we can all live in, that welcomes the diversity of what it means to be in this big tent republic of ours with all of the highest aspirations we have. From Winthrop's City on a Hill, to Hoover's Chicken in Every Pot, to Roosevelt's Happy Days Are Here Again, to Eisenhower's Peace and Prosperity, to Holland's Only One Earth, Let's Take Care of It, to Amanda Gorman, who reminded us, when day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. Thank you. And now back to Catherine.
Dean Downs, thank you. And again, Chancellor Diermeier, thank you for your remarks today and for the collaborative partnership you've helped to promote between the Faculty Senate and the Office of the Chancellor this year. Our collective work is strengthened when we both agree on vision and vigorously debate strategy. And I'm especially grateful for your goodwill in both. Our thanks too to Provost Susan Wente, whose leadership has shepherded progressive and humane accomplishments, especially in the contributions of historically underrepresented faculty voices during her tenure here. And finally, to the full Faculty Assembly, as well as to the many other faculty, staff, and community members who have endured this most challenging year. Through your own grief, through our collected losses, in a political landscape that amplified our deepest divisions and a social climate marked by fear, from behind masks and from at least 6 feet away. I offer my thanks for your resilience and irrepressible determination. Bound by adversity, your teaching, scholarship, and creative endeavors drive the mission of this university. We still have much work to do, but we do it united and strong. Thank you, and good evening.